Welcome to Parks Associates' inaugural Smart Spaces, Apartments, Hospitality, and Community Living. We are so excited to welcome you to our first virtual event today and welcome you back in 2023 for our in-person Smart Spaces Conference and virtual series across the year. My name is Elizabeth Parks, and I'm the President and CMO of Parks Associates. I certainly hope that you're familiar with some of our research work. For almost 40 years, we have dedicated our research practice around the consumer and looked at the impact of computing on consumers' lives in small to medium business markets. As the world and everyday living has evolved, our research practice has too. And for the past few years, we've had a special focus in on the multifamily space, multi-dwelling units, and we're now extending that further in 2023 to the building space. We're still very much focused, though, on the impact of technologies on consumers, really wherever they are, in a hotel, an apartment, student housing, senior living, and even at work in their small to medium business or large business work lives. Our sessions today are focused on tech-enabled buildings, driving the next generation of services. I'm going to give a brief overview, sharing some of Parks Associates' research, and then we'll go into our first session, broadband requirements and future-proofing the building environment. This is going to feature a variety of industry voices from broadband and housing to talk about the requirements needed for cloud-based systems running next-generation software in the integration of these different systems and services that also have attached devices to them. Following that session, we'll hear from the leadership at Universal Electronics, a powerhouse leading company in the controls industry. Then we have a session focused on system integration and platforms enabling new services, where we have an awesome set of speakers sharing some of the new use cases enabled as a result of prop tech and building management solutions. We want to thank our sponsors as well. for their support of our inaugural event. And so let me call them out: Vantiva, ADT Multifamily, the Connectivity Standards Alliance, Cox Communications, the NICE Group, Rapid Response Monitoring, Homebase, and Cooktop Safety. Thank you so much for your support of our inaugural event. And if anybody has interest in participating, please reach out to Ashton Gambrell on our team. We're going to be hosting virtual sessions quarterly around this Smart Spaces event, sharing Parks Associates' latest research and data. This is a huge area of coverage, and we're excited to dig deeper and share our insights throughout the year, as well as bring together leading industry players to help educate and inform our audience. So today I want to share some of the research from our consumer survey work of 10,000 households in the United States that we do quarterly. We also have research of property managers and building owners, about 300 of them who responded to our survey, where we'll share some of this data on what they're looking for as they incorporate and integrate technology into new buildings and retrofit. So let's start with what we all definitely know, and our research shows that the vast majority of US households say it would be very difficult to be without home internet. And we know that these consumers at home are also consumers at work and at school, and that business as well relies heavily on connectivity and the infrastructure enabling it. So I'm going to share a little bit more of our consumer research and the property manager data that we have. But first, let me set the stage in understanding the types of housing that people live in. We know that most are in single-family homes, but about a third are in multi-dwelling units. And you can see from this image here that breakdown. We also know that we have over 700,000 multifamily properties in the United States. And just like single-family homeowners, these people like and expect technology. And when we look at the building environment, we know that the network is really the backbone and the key to any device and system deployments. Our research shows that currently 65% of multifamily builders report that their business models currently leverage smart home technologies to help differentiate properties and add value through operational savings and increased rental fees. With these opportunities come all sorts of challenges, though, and new solutions entering the market, making it quite competitive. Property owners and building managers tell us that the biggest challenges with building technology includes the integration with other existing systems, the concerns over security and privacy issues, being able to support the various technologies, and of course, challenges with Wi-Fi and connectivity issues as a result of all of the devices being added to the network. So let's take a look at what's happening when more and more devices get added to the home. And in any home environment, you can see there's a lot of issues going on with the home network. And this is very common in apartments, with about half of apartment residents reporting some kinds of network issues, including slow Wi-Fi, outages, and various coverage gaps. This is why the internet and bulk internet services are becoming so popular in the apartment space and MDUs. Currently, over one-half of property managers and owners have bulk internet services in at least one of the properties. And the reason why is because people expect this to be there. These types of services will end up evolving over time to be a differentiator for that property as really a baseline amenity in the end that eventually can enable all sorts of other services, creating new revenue opportunities and differentiation in the properties for the resident. So as we've seen broadband usage increase and the addition of various connected devices, we also see the value of technology increase. This has resulted in managed Wi-Fi and managed services being introduced by service providers. This can help remedy a lot of the technical challenges that are occurring on the network with network congestion, and also create that new set of opportunities for consumers as it relates to their experience with devices and services. Building managers and service providers now have a new ability to create support, device protection, more satisfaction, increased NPS, and have a new set of use cases as a direct result of connectivity. All of this is very important because across the board, consumers keep using and buying connected devices. So when we look at a view of the consumer device market, this is one of my very favorite charts at Parks Associates, where you're looking at 3 different categories of devices across the past 7 years. You can see we've got 3 key categories: consumer electronics, smart home devices, as well as connected health products. In general, there are a lot more low bandwidth products being added to the network, but at the same time, we've seen a lot of growth and adoption of high bandwidth products. For instance, over half of US internet households now own a smart TV, and a lot of them are streaming in 4K video. Now, also from our research, we know that 83% of households have at least one OTT service, and 23% have 9 or more services. There are so many changes happening in how consumers are using devices, especially devices that have video feeds to them. And when we talk about smart home devices, I want to bring up this chart. We do show that 37% of US households now own a smart home device, and this is a slow and steady category that continues to grow. I want to make sure it's noted here that smart speakers are not included in this mix, as we count those as a consumer electronics device. But let me show you the adoption of these types of devices across different households. You can see MDU residents have really made a jump in 2020, and that those numbers are holding, and across the board that continue adoption with an additional 1% increase out of our latest survey work. The demand for internet services comes along with increased devices in the home. And we see this playing out in terms of what expectations are that consumers have. Ultimately, what they want is comfort, savings, and convenience. And a lot of this ends up being centered around access controls as well as energy management solutions. So security, safety, savings, the user experience, and in the future, wellness will all become a focus for forward-thinking companies serving the consumer market. We will see the access control, though, really remains one of the largest drivers for building owners and property managers. So let me show you a little bit of research that we've done providing that perspective. The biggest concern for property managers and building owners these days is safety and security, and making sure that that area is secured. Concerns around energy and sustainability are also noted, and we'll see this really increase in the coming years as the energy, social, and governance issues continue to rise for companies and consumers. Energy management will continue to become a big deal in the future, and we heard a lot about that in our earlier sessions at Smart Energy Summit this morning. When we ask about factors for choosing different providers for technologies in the multifamily space, the integration and ability to connect with other existing systems is the most important consideration, followed by the specific brands that are offered by the vendor. So this relationship that is always built along trust will extend into the multifamily environment as property managers and building owners make decisions about what new technology to put into buildings. Overall, though, what we see multifamily builders and property owners really getting at here is increased rental revenues. These are the driving factors across the board here: the ability to charge more rent, to differentiate properties, and to provide a new experience for consumers and save money. But right behind that is also the operational savings that come along with that. And as we see labor shortages continue to increase and be a problem, property owners and building managers are going to look to technology to help fill that gap. Lastly, what we consider is that there is so much coming in as we look to 2023. The investments being made into prop tech right now are full force and certainly are driven by access and controls and the security segments. We're going to continue to see great investments being made, especially around camera monitoring, things like smart parking, and other safety and security use cases. In addition, that role of energy management will continue to be highlighted, incorporated into new technology. The infrastructure for the building, though, this is the most important aspect for new services in the future, and that's what we'll be talking about today in our sessions. So thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions about our research work, please ask us, and we are very excited to welcome our first panel of speakers who will be talking about the role of broadband requirements, featuring Parks Associates Director of Research, Kristen Hannock. Give us a minute and we'll be right back. Thanks for joining us today.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion, taking a look at broadband requirements and future-proofing the building environment. I'm Kristen Hannock, Research Director here at Parks Associates. I lead our coverage of broadband and connectivity, as well as some of the exciting developments going on in the multifamily market today. We have with us today a great lineup of speakers that I'm very pleased to be able to introduce to you all. To start things off, Andrew, with Mill Creek Residential, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do there?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. At Mill Creek Residential, we're a developer, general contractor, owner, and operator. And my role here at Mill Creek is Vice President of Community Technology. So I oversee our technology strategy for all of our telecom, smart building and connectivity, how that ties into our prop tech, and ultimately our innovation strategy. So all of these building systems and prop tech just give us a great opportunity to bring together a unique resident experience from the design phase all the way through our operating and resident experience. Thanks, Kristen.
We're very happy to have you here with us today, Andrew. Next, Blake Drager of Google Fiber. Blake, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Google Fiber, and particularly what it's doing in the MDU space?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Blake Drager. I come from a company called WebPass, which was a MDU-focused internet operator, which joined the Google Fiber family in 2016. Since then, my role has become more focused on MDU technology and strategy. And of course, we're continuing to bring the fastest internet we can into the multi-housing sort of environment. But more and more, the conversation has shifted towards managed Wi-Fi and managed services. And we're currently exploring how our service can complement kind of the world of IoT and prop tech and managed Wi-Fi.
Yeah, very happy to have you here with us, Blake. Next, Kevin Donnelly of the National Multifamily Housing Council. Kevin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about what the council does?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Kristen. It's good to be with you and the other panelists today to talk about so much of the work that NMHC members are doing. Like Andrew, I get the pleasure of working with folks across the industry, across market segments, with a key focus on broadband deployment and access, and then also how it intersects with the Internet of Things and smart technology, which is obviously a driving trend. But at NMHC, we are the representatives or the trade group that represents the multifamily housing industry here in Washington. We are certainly federally focused in terms of policy, but as you can see here on the slide, really the storyteller of the industry and the key economic driver that the industry is, and the reality that we are home to 40 million Americans in the 5+ multifamily rental space. And with that is a lot of focus on innovation, technology, and ultimately making sure that the capital flows for the industry are there and vibrant so that we can meet the booming demand for rental housing. So I'm looking forward to today's conversation. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you very much. We're very happy to have you and very interested to learn more. Next, Guillermo Rivas, VP of New Business Development at Cox. Guillermo, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about what Cox does in this market?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Guillermo Rivas, and I'm really grateful with Thanksgiving coming up, really grateful to be here with everyone. And as the Vice President of New Business Development at Cox, our teams work with apartment, single-family, mixed-use builders, owners, and operators, along with land developers to access project infrastructure needs. To assess, project infrastructure needs in order to ensure connectivity needs are met today and for the project's future vision.
Yeah, very, very happy to have you here with us. Next, Todd Thorpe, VP of Sales at Dojo Networks. Todd, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you do?
Hi, Kristen. Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to thank Parks Associates as well for setting up and hosting this event. I've been in the telecom industry for over 30 years, worked with multifamily owners, developers, management companies in that capacity. Spent about 20 years of that mostly in multifamily on the provider side. Did some consulting as a property consultant as well. Dojo Networks has been in business for over 25 years. We're a national provider of property-wide managed Wi-Fi for multifamily, including conventional, student, senior, and affordable. We do both new build and existing properties. And our focus is really delivering what we call a frictionless, always-on experience for the resident and the staff. We manage it with our single pane of glass that we've developed called Elemento that also integrates with the property management software. And then in addition to managed Wi-Fi deployments, we've also rescued over 5,000 units with our Lifeline program where we've stepped in and taken over underperforming networks. And we've also connected over 10,000 affordable housing units with our Affordable Connections program. So again, thank you. I appreciate the time and look forward to the discussion as well.
It should be a really great discussion. Lots of very, very talented folks here. And very happy to have you here with us as well, Todd. So very much looking forward to how you've seen this market really evolve over the few decades that Dojo has been in business. So yes, as I was saying, just really a fantastic lineup of people here today to discuss some of these really incredible changes and transformations that we're seeing happen in the industry. To kind of kick us off, can we talk a little bit about maybe what is the state of broadband and connectivity today in the apartment and multifamily space? What do current broadband deployments really look like? And Kevin, this is really where the NMHC plays, and I think you have maybe kind of the best big picture view right now.
Sure. Thank you, Kristen. I'm sure others here will have valuable insight that I'm going to be curious to hear as well. I think broadband connectivity overall, it's the lifeblood of multifamily at this point in time. Not one developer or owner manager I talk to is of the perspective that broadband or connectivity does not matter. We have quickly seen, over the course of, the most recent history, 10 years or so, seen broadband as a nice to have amenity to quickly be a must have dividing line. And it's no longer just about whether or not you have broadband, but the type of or the quality and the speed and the reliability of that broadband network. And, even more so when you layer in the operational pieces that are so reliant on strong connectivity. I think Elizabeth rightly in her presentation walked us through a lot of great data points that shows the importance of sort of that relationship between connectivity and all of the new smart technology, building technologies that we're deploying. And as the industry really leans into, greater environmental resiliency, posturing, and really doing more on the ESG front, I think the role of these systems and the need for a really strong and robust broadband network behind it, and the ability to pivot and become better able to be future flexible in the technology and the capacity we deploy, I think are going to be only growing in more and more importance. But I think the industry has long prioritized connectivity. What was a priority, many years ago on video and delivery of phone and traditional systems has really shifted to a bulk model that Elizabeth highlighted. Managed Wi-Fi is clearly the trajectory that everyone's on right now. The buzzword is all about managed Wi-Fi. I think from NMHC standpoint, we're trying to look a little bit down the field to see where do we go next? How do our members and the industry keep meeting up with demand, and really be able to partner with providers like the folks here today to make sure that residents in our multifamily communities are well served, but also protect the property and the future of that valuation and that asset class. So happy to be here and dig into more of these questions as we go.
I think that's very, very insightful, Kevin.
I was going to build on what Kevin was saying, just to add on to that about residents' expectations, really where connectivity, whenever you pull out your phone, you're expecting to be able to make a call, check social media, check the news, or whatever it is. You just generally expect to be able to use your phone anywhere, anytime. And so there's a lot of different ways that can be achieved. There's bulk managed Wi-Fi solutions. There's different, you could have multiple ISPs with a building network in the amenity areas and the corridors. I think one of the areas that's kind of overlooked but has a lot going into it is parking garages. And as we look at EV charging, at other parking amenities, at just general safety, if you're in a parking garage, there's a sense of security and safety that comes from being connected to the internet and knowing that your phone is fully functioning when you're there. Cars that now get updates while they're parked. I think there's just so many areas of our community, inside and outside, that rely on connectivity now, that kind of that future state of broadband is no longer really a home internet. And there's lots of ways to achieve it, but I think it really is where the industry is going, is towards looking at the entire community as a holistic place that needs to have seamless connectivity as you move through that. In that experience, you're not expected to have to become a technical expert, right? You don't want to have to know how to move between networks or manipulate devices, right? You expect that your phone's going to work, and the more seamless that is, the better experience you can deliver. So I think that's really the kind of the goalpost that we're headed towards.
I would agree, with what Andrew and Kevin both just said. And, I think we're just getting started, Dojo, but as an industry as a whole, we're maturing now as an industry, and managed Wi-Fi has been around, but it's really starting to take off and kind of find its own. And there's so much technology out there that hasn't even really been invented yet, that we're trying to figure out how all of these pieces fit together. But I'm very excited about where this industry is headed and the adoption rates that we're seeing. But I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg, and we're really just getting started with everything now.
So something I'd really love to dig into a little bit more is really understanding how the role of broadband specifically is evolving. So we've talked about some of the different use cases. So of course, it's not just enough to have connectivity for residents. We want this ubiquitous Wi-Fi experience that's available everywhere. And it's really helping to enable some of these new smart building use cases, smart home use cases. So where do we see multifamily properties right now? What are multifamily properties using these network backbones for, and what are some of the current requirements?
I can take a shot at that first. Kristen, what we're seeing at Cox in the last 15 years of experience with managed Wi-Fi, we're talking particularly about managed Wi-Fi, is a lot of the use cases that were in commercial are now transferring over to both apartment and mixed-use apartment type facilities. A lot of what we just talked about as far as smart cars and having the ability to connect to the internet in order for charging, but it goes beyond that, also having the ability to track resident movement within the property, right? What is being used, what is not being used in order for a property owner to maximize their amenities. Does the washroom get used that often? Does the pool table get used that often? Are those areas, are people seeing congregations? So actually being able to track movement within a property is one of the applications that we're starting to see being used that actually come from commercial applications that are being used. For example, that we supply the use cases for Allegiant Stadium where the Raiders play, where they want to track actually how much traffic there is in the parking lot, how many people are entering the stadium by hour, how many people are actually moving during halftime, where is it that they're going, to make sure that they have enough flow and enough space for where traffic is flowing. We're starting to see that application going into mixed use.
And so certainly lots of potential using some of the Wi-Fi motion sensing technology that's been coming out into the market. Blake, what are some of your thoughts here as well? I know this is a market Google Fiber serves, and lots of interest there.
Yeah, we've been talking to our partners, our real estate partners, more and more about kind of trying to distill their needs in terms of what connectivity looks like for MDU properties. And really, there's kind of a three-prong need there, and the obvious one is resident connectivity, and that can be connectivity within the homes, connectivity in the hallways, like Andrew mentioned, in parking garages and underserved areas where cell coverage doesn't exist. Is a big challenge in MDU environments. We're also obviously seeing the need for IoT coverage. And those IoT devices are showing up more and more in parking garages and hallways, obviously within the unit. And that coverage is needed both for the residents and for the building. And the third, I think, kind of often overlooked need is connectivity for the staff of the building. Because of the lack of cell coverage and antiquated sort of DAS systems and older communication systems, there's a growing need just for the staff to be able to communicate with each other, with the residents, and kind of always be on. And then, of course, on top of all of that, you have this data layer, which is kind of a limitless opportunity, I think, for operational efficiency, for just smooth resident experience. We're really just scratching the surface on what kind of the data of the IoT and resident environment can look like.
So certainly a lot of changes from the days when there was really only resident procured Wi-Fi, and maybe you had Wi-Fi in the staff center. Todd, I know this is a market you've been serving for a long time, and you probably have seen it evolve and change quite a lot over the years.
Yeah, so I could add, so if you guys remember the day when Hotels were starting to offer free HBO. You're driving down the road and you see on the marquee, free HBO, free cable. And they started adopting that and adding that in. And then hotels added in internet service, and it was pay as you go. Some hotels still charge for that, but in most cases it's free. So you wouldn't stay at a Holiday Inn or a Marriott, and then they wouldn't have internet service, right? It has become ubiquitous, and it's now an expectation when you check into that hotel that the internet is there, and it's also going to work. Like Andrew was saying before, residents expect it to work like the lights, like the water, like the gas. They just want to flip the switch and they expect it to work. So we're starting to really see the evolution of broadband now in multifamily. Student housing was a very early adopter of this, senior properties, where it's becoming an expectation. It's not really an option. And even the word amenity anymore is not really even applicable, I think. It literally is becoming expected, and not only expected, but reliable. And I think that's where we're headed.
Yeah, certainly. And of course, there's market research data from Parks Associates showing that around 36% of U.S. internet households are still working remotely. Quite a few folks living in multifamily properties, and they need that very high quality, very reliable internet service in order to be able to actually do their jobs. So it's not an option for a lot of people. So another really interesting area is taking a look at how multifamily properties and MDUs as a whole are really positioning their networks for the future. What use cases do we anticipate coming down the pipeline? So we've talked a little bit, of course, about this drive into managed Wi-Fi. So lots of excitement there. And I know there's lots of different particular areas and use cases for some of these new smart technologies aimed at kind of decreasing cost, preventing kind of asset loss, improving kind of asset preservation, and also just offering some very nice resident amenities. And then I guess Andrew can talk a little bit about some of this. I know you've seen a lot in your role, and lots of kind of very exciting priorities that Mill Creek Residential is working on.
Yeah, and I think Kevin hit on it earlier. I think some of it's around the word of future flexible. Yeah, I think Kevin used that earlier. I think for us, right now we're leaning pretty heavily into the managed Wi-Fi area, and really seeing the opportunity, kind of to what Todd was saying, to, you move in, and as you're moving in, you're given access to your home Wi-Fi. There's no contract, truck roll, there's no waiting time or appointment to be set up, but really saying as soon as you set foot at the community that you have Wi-Fi, that it moves around with you, that it's extremely reliable, that we have backup circuits in place where we can. And really where that's headed, though, is that from an owner perspective, it's the ability to own what's behind the walls, to own the wires, to own the pathways, to have future pathways in, because as we're in a change right now in the industry, we're always going to be in a state of change. And I think that's what we're trying to prepare for, is that we need to be able to pull wire or fiber or whatever we need back to our homes so that we can scale as time goes on. As minor as it sounds, it is the distance from the telecom room to the home, because the distance that you have to travel affects the speed that you can put over that wire. And so being cognizant of how we do our design of our communities plays into what we're going to be able to offer in the future, whether it's gig today, multi-gig in the future, and beyond that. There is as much as I don't want to acknowledge it at times on the multi-gig, 5 gig, where this goes, as many as devices can't consume it today. But the reality is, as the industry and devices and technology grows, we need the opportunity to deliver the best opportunities to our residents at all times. And so there's a lot to be said for that future flexibility. And, I think where the industry is going in terms of where that's growing will be a lot in the ESG area. It's been a big emphasis for us growing in our ESG practice. And having a connected building, having network and thoughtful design gives us incredible opportunities as we look at sustainability and energy management going into the future, and how we can be responsible owners of our communities. So I think it's really exciting. I think it's exciting to see what's possible when you have a good, well-built, well-designed community with thoughtful backbone to it all, and a good team that can then leverage a good core to go into operations, ESG, and all of the areas that we can benefit from.
Yes, absolutely. And certainly also some unique challenges in retrofitting existing buildings versus new construction.
And Kristen and Andrew, from a operator side, completely agree with everything that Andrew said from a design standpoint. I would add, from what Cox is looking at, in our experience, is actually what it is very important to design for as much flexibility as possible because of what's coming in the future. So from a use on the broadband side, we're seeing where AR, VR is going to go to, not just from how a property can apply it, but from what residents are going to be doing inside their apartment, right? Because I would say within the next 5 years, people are going to be watching the Super Bowl from the 50-yard line, three rows in, with 5 other friends, maybe in person in their apartment, one other person wearing goggles, and their other 3 friends in another state watching that game, and be feeling connected to that game like never before. We're seeing it already with concerts. So within the next 5 years, that's probably something that's going to happen within the NFL. Telehealth is also becoming very important. We're seeing a lot of conversations occurring of how telehealth moves into the community, where that's a mixed use apartment environment. There will be a need where eventually, my personal experience just the other day kind of wowed me. I had my, I've got a code, and that's why I sound a little weird. And I had a follow-up with the doctor, and I've got also a joint injury. And the doctor on teleconference on Zoom, he's like, lay down on the floor, bend your knee, do this, do that. And he's like, everything they probably would have done in the office in order to give me the appointment to go get an x-ray and get all the other lab work that I got to get done was done over that. What will eventually happen is that x-ray that I've got to go to a central office for Kaiser might end up being facilities within a mixed-use environment, where actually I'll be able to walk in somewhere, have an x-ray performed, or have a full body scan performed. And that gets over to the doctor. I go back to my apartment, in the privacy of my own apartment, and have a discussion over the results almost immediately. So those bandwidth requirements, that is where you're going to start using multi-gig. And that's where the importance of what owners are looking at, besides providing them as much flexibility within the backbone of the property itself, also what's out on the street. So, as an example, when we're looking at large mixed-use projects, we're looking at redundancy going in. We're bringing in 10 gig circuit on the resi side, another 10 gig circuit on the commercial side, so that there's enough capacity there. And then the confidence that you have with Cox is that we're always upgrading and bringing in more fiber. We got to bring 144 fiber count. We'll do that. We've been out on the streets now for over 50 years. So we have the capacity to do that in all of the communities that we serve.
Yes, and lots of folks are looking at having their deployments of technologies. They need to last many years, potentially decades. So it certainly helps to have that in place from the beginning.
And, Kristen, I would just add, when from NMHC standpoint, when we look at broadband and connectivity issues writ large, we really take a step back and see that broadband and connectivity are vehicles for housing opportunity. And, I think the pandemic put us all on a fast track to realize, as Guillermo was saying, the potential for a robust broadband network, right? Whether it was telemed, which, given the aging population in the US, that's only going to become more and more important as we try to manage costs on that side. But look, you had kids in this country, in the the richest country in the world, having to go hang outside of McDonald's to get a hotspot to get their homework done. And so the immense challenges on that front, and needing to make sure that our networks can support all aspects of society as we move further and further down this road, is going to be really important. But it's also about the ability of, as you pointed to, Kristen, the research from Parks on the segment of folks who are still in remote work and who are likely remain in that posture. I think there's certainly a generational breakdown, in NMHC research on our renter preferences studies very much are in sync with and have a lot of synergy with what Parks is looking at. That this is not a fleeting moment. This is here to stay. And while we all thought it was about Netflix and chill a few years ago, it is truly about someone's ability to have a life and access opportunity and education. So it's something, and why we've been so strong on pushing the importance of this in the industry, but on the policy side too, rightly pointing that when we talk about existing properties or we talk about smaller properties, that is going to be the huge hurdle for this country to overcome.
And the affordability aspect too, we've been very involved in closing that digital divide, because there is a lot of gaps there with affordable housing and those residents not being able to have those services. Well, like what Andrew was saying before, one thing that I think we're in sync with Mill Creek is the property owner, and this is for the owners and developers who are listening and watching, is that you do own the network. You guys have control of the network. We're the provider. We operate it as if we own it, but ultimately, as the owner and the developer, it's your network and you dictate it. We just work with you on how to set that network up so it's future proof, right? We try to protect our partners against technology obsolescence, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know, so you have to kind of plan for the future.
Yeah, certainly. And so talking a little bit about some of that older infrastructure in place, there are, of course, lots of buildings that have, the old 4-pair wiring, and that might be their only source of wiring throughout the building. And that's going to be a massive kind of challenge to walk through when it comes to offering modern broadband speeds. So I'd say a lot of challenges on the horizon, lots of opportunities. I guess, Blake, can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the barriers and challenges you're seeing MDUs encounter in future-proofing?
Yeah, absolutely. I heard that term future flexible earlier. I really love that, because you can never be future proof. None of us have a crystal ball. We don't know where technology is really going to go in 20 years. But being future resistant or future flexible is the best we can do. And really, flexibility is at the key of that. Andrew touched on this earlier, but certainly those buildings that have more robust kind of conduit or microduct infrastructure, whether that's to the unit or within the hallways at strategic locations, makes it that much more flexible in terms of, when we go into build, the CapEx required to overbuild a network or build a network within the building has diminished dramatically. So I would say investing in that kind of structured conduit, structured infrastructure is really key to future flexibility. And the reality is, what you put on top of that network in terms of access points or radio network or fiber or copper, whatever you're putting in those conduits, at some point you're going to have to replace that. I mean, these buildings are going to outlast the technology regardless of what we're putting in there. So I think you kind of have to put that into your plan, and you can put the best technology in there now to buy the most time. But there might be a 10-year replacement cycle, because this industry is moving so quickly, and the ecosystem is evolving that dramatically, that in 10 years, this conversation will be completely different. That being said, I think some of these newer technology paths like Wi-Fi 7 and some of the newer IoT protocols should buy us more time than some of the previous Wi-Fi protocols have. So hopefully that replacement cycle grows over time. And 10 years ago, we thought putting fiber to the unit and fiber everywhere would future-proof us. But now we're seeing more and more IoT devices and hardware that requires power, non-local power. So we didn't know that we would want water sensors down the hallway or devices that need to be powered up somehow that can't just be fiber fed. So fiber is great. Fiber will future-proof us in terms of throughput and multi-gig technology. And certainly we would recommend fiber to the unit, but it doesn't accommodate every need.
Yeah, I would. It's an interesting point that Blake raises, right? Completely agree with Andrew and Blake. The best way to be flexible is the pathways, including the pathways from the street to the property. So the most expensive piece of a retrofit is the trenching. So as an example, in Las Vegas, cost per foot is north of $700 to dig a trench. Arizona, because the ground is so hard, is similar type of rate. So depending on where you're at, that's going to be the most expensive piece. If there are pathways for multiple providers, that's the best way of creating flexibility, is having the pathways there. When a building's going up, it's the easiest time to do that. In a retrofit, I would strongly suggest that if there is going to be any trenching done, that it not be done just for a single operator, but that there be additional conduit in there so that you don't run into the problem in the future if you have someone that's not providing the service at the levels that you'd like. From the wiring side, completely agree with Blake. Fiber should be able to meet the needs for at least the next 10 years, right? It's more of the infrastructure that's out in the street and what level of service the infrastructure that's out on the street is providing to the building, which is why I say that the trench or conduit from the street to the site is going to be one of the most important pieces. So having multiple ways of accessing that becomes important besides the infrastructure that's in the building. And then in a garden style or large campus type facility, because this just came up actually with one of the owners that were working, they forgot to put conduit between buildings, and now they're surprised about the cost to go and retrench between buildings, and it's an expensive amount when you're talking 600 feet, $600 a foot.
Yeah, that can be a very costly miss when you leave those parts out, but also. We're big proponents. We'll do fiber to the unit, but our preference would be running copper because whether it's a new build or an existing, trying to keep the cost down and as few of electronics also mean fewer fail points. So if you can run directly from the closet copper right into the unit, and then power that AP over Cat 6, Cat 6A Ethernet, you're going to have more reliability. We can power that directly off of the switch. But if an owner is very adamant, they really feel strongly about doing fiber, we'll certainly do that. But we're trying to keep those costs down as much as possible. We are a Ruckus partner, so we use Ruckus equipment. But we want to try to keep those costs down as much as possible. And especially in retrofits, that's where you start to see the costs go up. I agree with Guillermo, making sure that conduit in garden style is extremely important because connecting all of those buildings starts to drive those costs up.
And one thing I would just kind of add to all this conversation from a owner-operator perspective is, and Todd, you hit on it kind of there. There are certain types of wiring or hardware that are common within the managed Wi-Fi industry, and owning your wire, owning your hardware as an owner operator gives you the flexibility that as things change, as partnerships form, as mergers happen or acquisitions happen, if you own hardware and wire that is common to the industry, it gives you as an owner that flexibility to kind of never be caught off guard or caught in a difficult situation. You have the you can pivot between those partners if it's needed, and it allows you as an owner to just be much more flexible. And then just an earlier point to the discussion around retrofits and the challenges there. I think from our perspective, it's really important to have a unified experience for our residents, and then be able to achieve that experience with various partners. And so that if you're in a retrofit scenario versus a total greenfield build, you have the ability to leverage different partnerships that are the right for that fit. Maybe there's unique state or jurisdiction laws that you need to do something different in the way that you deliver your service. And so having a uniform type end goal of what we deliver to our residents, we also have to have the flexibility to get to that end goal with different partners and in different methods. And so I think it's, really understanding what we're after in terms of delivery, and then working with different partners to know where the right partnerships are to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. We have some questions in from the audience that I'd like to make sure we tackle while we still have time. So I guess kind of first question in, I have a question on asking how challenging it is for property and building managers to navigate all of the options out there. Or is there a recognition that new tech being added is a true requirement or benefit, or is there a wait and see period? And then Kevin, maybe you can tackle that.
Yeah, thanks. I do think that Andrew has the pleasure of serving on NMHC's Intelligent Building and Connectivity Committee, and I think one thing that we constantly hear from owners, and understanding that owners are not all Mill Creek, right? There's a lot. Mill Creek tends to be very, forward thinking or embracing of technology. I think, Kristen, the questioner rightly points out that some in the multifamily industry are known to be slow adopters. That our investors are hypersensitive to where our dollars are flowing, and we need to be careful about not throwing money down dark rabbit holes that we never recoup. So I do think that broadband maybe and connectivity overall has increasingly moved to the top of the development stack or importance there because of everything that flows off of it. But there is, I think, a wait and see approach on maybe more on the smart tech side, where broadband, I think Todd rightly pointed that this is no longer a question. It is a must prioritize line item for us.
But to Kevin's point, I think there are really good consultants, designers. There are some, telecom attorneys. There are lots of different options out there to get educated with, in more of, as an owner, these are my priorities. This is what I'm looking to achieve. What's the best way to go about that? There are some great groups out there and individuals who can help coach and help navigate through kind of that sea of options, because there are a lot out there. And the way you go through it, there's not one path, through all of the options that's best. It really does depend on what you're looking to achieve.
Yeah, I would just jump in there again and say there really is no one path to seamless connectivity. For some owners, that's going to be the managed Wi-Fi model or bulk delivery, or in some cases, it's going to be a continued delivery of a choice model, right, where you're bringing in multiple providers to meet different needs. And I think that varies by market segment. I think last year we did a survey of our membership and found that still 80% of surveyed multifamily properties had 2 or more providers on site. And in some cases, it's not uncommon for our members to have 3 or 4, or 5 providers in certain markets. So I think, the model is one that lends itself to being nimble. Like Andrew says, get smart quick, but you got to rely on the experts, the engineering side, the legal teams, the folks to help you navigate it from the consultancies.
Like Guillermo, he's sick, right? So imagine him going to the doctor and the doctor saying, well, I don't know what to do for you. I really can't help. You're looking for that doctor to tell you and give you recommendations. So my advice to the person asking the question, everybody else listening and watching, is find a partner. There are, like Andrew said, there's a lot of people out there. Find people that you trust, partner up with them, get advice that can put you in the right direction. They should have the answers for you, and they should have your best interest at heart as well, like a doctor would.
Yeah, so certainly it's lots of the companies I've talked to have mentioned how much of an enormous challenge it is wading through all the noise on this and really finding that trusted vendors, trusted partners. So certainly having somebody to help with that is an enormous kind of benefit and assistance. There's another question in that is kind of curious about another factor that we talked about earlier, and that is that of integration. How are companies navigating this integration kind of scenario? Are we seeing more vertically integrated solutions along the way, or is it really kind of just the make sure everything's integrated with Yardi? And then I guess anyone here can jump in. It wasn't necessarily aimed at any one in particular. So maybe Andrew, you can talk to this.
Sure. For us, it's really looking at what integrations are important. Not everything needs to be integrated to everything else necessarily. It's great when they are, and it is important as we look at partners to know who they partner with. I think for us, we generally prioritize not finding one company that does everything, but finding companies and partners that really work well with others and do what they do really well, and are actively looking to partner and use the strengths of others so that we have a diverse network of partnerships. It is a lot to keep track of and to manage and to kind of work through, but it also lends those who are best at what they do to excel and to drive partnerships through those, and kind of facilitate those connections as we can. But not necessarily always trying to find one group that can do everything. It has been our approach, and to have options. Like we said, we know what we're trying to achieve at the end. The way we get there on each project may look a little different behind the scenes.
Yeah, so certainly a lot of different moving parts, and how they come together is really up for interpretation. But yes, I believe that's all we have time for today. Thank you all so very much for joining us for this really great discussion. Very insightful and very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
For
you.
having us.
Thank you all. And yes, and thank you all attendees as well. Next up, we have our keynote from Universal Electronics. Hope to see you back in a few more minutes.
Great. What an awesome discussion. Thank you so much, Kristen, for that. So broadband really is the foundation of everything in the connected home. And I'm so excited to welcome Hrag Ohenesem, the Senior Vice President of Global Sales, Home Automation, Security, and Hospitality for Universal Electronics. Since 1986, UEI has been a leader in wireless control solutions for the home entertainment and smart home device market. Today, Hrag is going to share more about the opportunity for integration across key ecosystems, bringing great value to residents and building owners, as well as the hospitality markets. He's going to touch on some of the key issues around cloud architecture, interoperability, and the role of Matter for the future. If you have questions, please go ahead and add them in the chat. We should have some time at the end for Q&A. And so now I'd like to welcome our speaker to the stage today. So thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you here. And I'm going to turn it over to you. If you could, let's go ahead and start. Make sure we can hear you okay and that you have good control of your presentation.
All right. Thank you very much, Elizabeth, for the kind introduction. I'm going to try it. Future-proofing and future flexibility is key for presentation. So we're going to be trying to be flexible here. I'm going to turn it off. Do you see me okay and the slide deck?
We can see you great. You sound great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And do you see the presentation?
Yep, your slides are there.
All right. So today we're going to cover the market overall from an MDU perspective. And MDU is, from our point of view, a mixed residential as well as hospitality. Covering the dynamics of what's going on, and then how would UEI provide a solution both from a hardware perspective, software perspective, and services, both to the property manager and resident. UEI has been focused on creating a smart living for the consumer by creating products and technologies that would help them discover and interact with devices in their home. At a glance, UEI is a leader in home control. Most probably most of the audience here would know us as the remote control guys, the leaders in home entertainment products, which we've been focusing on for the last 3 decades. However, in the last 10 years, we've been broadening our product portfolio from IoT devices and HVAC control, building a B2B business as we are known for in the remote control industry. As a publicly held company, our headquarters is in Scottsdale, Arizona. We do have a number of offices in California, China, Brazil, and the Netherlands and India, all of them focusing on R&D and, of course, regional support of our customers. This year, we've been focusing on sustainability, and by sustainability, we're looking at recyclable material for packaging products and also trying to eliminate batteries from landfills overall. As a vertically integrated company, we do have our own manufacturing facilities. Facilities are in China, Vietnam, Brazil, Mexico, with the last one just getting a certification for RBA, which confirms our commitment to social responsibility. As a leader in the industry, we do have a top tier rank of customer base in Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 around the globe. Today, we're going to focus on 2 of the verticals that we're talking about, which is the connected home with hardware devices, as well as software and services that are combined with them. Understanding that there are a number of other capabilities that we could offer, we could expand on that as we go. Some of the products we're talking about, voice-activated remote controls, voice-activated assistants in the home that work as a hub, require Wi-Fi, a major topic earlier on in the session. IoT devices with sub-gig frequency, Z-Wave, and Zigbee, depending on pro security or DIY focus, as well as smart thermostats, which are usually done B2B for most of our HVAC OEMs and security OEMs. However, we do have a number of Z-Wave, Zigbee, and Wi-Fi products that are available for private labeling as well. Knowing that we cannot supply everything as a turnkey to all of our customers and being flexible to the needs of our customers, we do supply chips and modules that are powered by our QuickSet Cloud. And we will touch on QuickSet Cloud a little bit later. But again, the key term here is enabling our customers through technology that we would provide regardless of the shape and look of the technology itself. So familiar statistics from Parks, about 130 million homeowners in the US alone, from which, as we heard earlier, 1/3 of them are in multifamily units. So 33 million households are in multifamily. That does not include a key factor, which is the hospitality hotels, over 5 million units on their own, as well as the student housing and active senior housing. Looking at this dynamic and what are the needs, we have to focus on two groups: the property managers / owners, as well as the guests themselves, or the residents in this case. So what does the property manager want? We talked about this earlier. We heard Elizabeth mentioning it. They want to differentiate themselves from the rest. There's a lot of opportunity there for reaching out to the resident or the guest, depending on the type of the facility that we're talking about, hospitality or MDU. However, having a smart property is a key. That attracts the resident, also at the same time lowers the operating cost of the property owner and manager. With some of the challenges that we talked about employment and having technicians available and having access to the property itself, monitoring the different devices is extremely important. So looking at the unit itself, the overall property, accessing it for monitoring purposes, not necessarily actually invading the privacy of the resident, which is key. Giving the property manager enough knowledge about the health of the property helps them prepare for what's coming, either preventive maintenance or acting in case of emergency. And we will touch on that a little bit later. More than half of the MDU builders out there do emphasize that having a smart device on the property will save the property manager or owner somewhere between 6 to 7% of operating costs. Extremely important. Looking at the CapEx that is involved in bringing a smart device into the household, of course, a lot of people are going to focus on that. But when you're looking at the savings that you're getting, and it depends on how often you use the service, how often you use the technology, you can increase the savings to somewhere between 25 to 30%, highlighted by temperature changes, controlling drapery, and other things that you could do at the same time when the property is connected. So key point is connected property, improving the overall experience, and at the same time lowering the operational cost. Who are they targeting? Well, the demographics today for MDUs is much younger than yours truly. Looking at what they're expecting from an MDU facility, an apartment or a condominium. Of course, they're looking at modern accommodations. They're comfortable with technology, so they're not going to shy away from using technology as long as it's available for them. And they're willing to pay more for that technology as long as it's environmentally safe and accomplishes basically energy management and energy consumption reduction in the process. All that, along with the efficiency of the value itself, meaning what I'm getting for my dollar, is extremely important. Focusing on these two groups is extremely important. Our solutions are looking at the property manager in mind, as well as their residents and guests. guests because we're talking about hospitality in some cases. These two groups look at things differently. They're looking at the overall structure from their point of view. However, they meet in the middle with sustainability. They're looking for a sustainable resident. In one case, the property manager, in some cases, hotels, for example, they have their green initiatives, and that's why they're making sure that their property is sustainable. The guest is environmentally conscious, so they want to make sure that that is addressed for them. Remote access. Property manager has, let's say, employees on a desktop doing so many other things. However, could access units or properties just to look at the safety and sanity of the property itself. Security, safety, and avoiding damage, which was one of the other items that Elizabeth mentioned in the opening remarks, making sure that you're doing things ahead of something happening and preventing additional damage. The guests themselves, they'll look at it from their own perspective. A resident wants to check on their apartment, their unit. Some cases turn on the AC while they're coming back from work, if they're working outside or they're shopping for a few hours, making sure that they have the comfort of the energy efficiency property, on both sides. One is trying to save money for their own purposes. The other one is trying to save the overall environment itself and making sure that they are good to go. The convenience, same thing. Property manager has their own need for convenience, meaning access to the property without actually physically going there or sending someone there. The resident is conveniently accessing the unit for different reasons. They want to check on their cat. They want to increase the temperature if it's cold outside. Closed drapery, so on and so forth. Just giving overall ease of use. All in all, green initiatives are great, but it would be even better when they're saving a lot of green. So both parties combined are looking at the same thing. These are the 5 major elements that are common between the two groups. So where does UEI fit in this equation? Looking at the property managers one side, the residents on another. During a study from Parks Associates, about 44% of homeowners had indicated that they are actively working on energy efficiency in their homes. That means they're going out of their way to try to figure out what they're going to do to get an energy efficient property. And it can be a single use family. However, we're talking also about MDU managers and owners, because that's multiplying by X many units as we're talking. The residents, the same thing. When you look at an energy bill, 51% of a residential energy bill is coming from HVAC. So that's pretty big. Another 27% is coming from lighting and refrigeration. In parallel, at a hospitality environment, at a hotel, for example, 33% of that commercial location is coming from HVAC use cases. So the energy consumption of an HVAC unit, whether it's an MDU residential or hospitality, is significant. So it of course makes sense for us to go in and touch base on that pain point and figure out how we can address it. UEI has been known to look at markets and trying to address the different needs in a unique way. Introducing the UEI Tide Dial, which is the first of comfort product line that has won a Red Dot Award earlier this year. And it's a smart thermostat. Yes, it is a smart thermostat. So just a tidbit here, not a psychic. If I were, I could have won the $2 billion in Powerball and be done with it. However, could predict some of the questions that are coming. Not another smart thermostat. There are a lot of companies out there with major brands doing a great job accommodating the needs of the consumer from a smart thermostat usability perspective. While this unit, the Tide Dial, looks like a smart thermostat, acts like a smart thermostat, it is more than a smart thermostat. It is an in-home hub controller that is wired through the wires that are in the wall. So what does it have? It has colored LCD. In the case of the LCD itself, it will display a different color depending on the mode you're in. So if you're in cooling, heating, or in the eco mode, the display will change the color itself to give you a visual indication of what's going on. It has a number of sensors embedded, temp, humidity, occupancy, and carbon dioxide. It also can be connected through Zigbee to external sensors. So if you have a temp humidity sensor in the room for a bigger accommodation, or for a hallway, or a meeting room, if you will, you have multiple data points to get a better feel for what's going on in the room and adjust the HVAC control accordingly. So you don't have to just focus on a single point. The same thing with carbon dioxide. If there's an increased level of carbon dioxide in both sides of the room, in a hallway in this case, or a meeting room in the other case, you can adjust it accordingly. The unit itself is powered by QuickSet. We'll touch on this a little bit later. What is QuickSet and how can it impact the overall use case? It has a virtual assistant, which is powered by UEI's Nevo AI. And it also supports a service called Works with QuickSet that allows for additional functionality in the ecosystem that it goes in. In the room, the product has Wi-Fi, taking whatever it collects from the Zigbee IoT devices or other devices that are connected through the product itself in the unit into the property manager's cloud services. So you could see what's going on in the unit, utilizing what's going on through the hub itself. It could have IR control. In this case, it's a complex HVAC IR control for split systems. So if you have different split systems in the household or in the unit itself, you can control them using this product. It also can control consumer electronic devices, which is where the basis of UEI is. The unit has BLE. It's for onboarding and connectivity, making sure that everything that is being set up during setup through the technician is done using a basic app. And of course, talking about being future flexible and making sure that we're compatible with Matter, the product will be Matter compatible as we progress. The product portfolio itself is designed with the property manager in mind. Andrew mentioned about the ubiquitous look and the user experience, unique user experience or similar user experience. This product itself allows the property manager or owner, whether it's hospitality or MDU, to have a similar interface regardless of the type of HVAC that's in the background. So the most popular one that we see in hotels are the 24-volt AC relays. And in this case, you could attach a modular pack to support that. However, if the same property owner or manager has a bigger hotel that has a different type of HVAC system that requires 277-volt AC for control, we would introduce the Tide Bridge connected to that device while the Tide Dial becomes the user interface, the same user interface controlling the HVAC system in the room. So regardless of the type of the HVAC system on property, you could have the same experience on the front end. That eliminates friction. That eliminates the need for an additional learning curve on the technician side, on the property manager side, and so many others that are involved in the process. What is QuickSet? QuickSet has been around for more than 10 years. It powers more than 600 devices worldwide, from TVs to cable boxes to different types of devices, handheld devices, and AV and game consoles, allowing the company that actually licenses the technology access to the different types of requirements that are in there. Works with QuickSet introduce interoperability with devices that UEI will not provide. In this case, when talking about energy efficiency, shades or motorized shades come into play extensively. You can bring it up or bring it down, making sure that the sun comes in or stays out depending on the season. Lighting, light switches and light bulbs are important, as well as security. So doorbells and IP cameras would be brought into the equation seamlessly. So extremely important. Operating costs will be reduced, and then of course the overall experience with the compatibility factor is extremely important to the resident themselves. What happens? We bring in the device into the household, into the unit, turn on the thermostat, wire it. The virtual assistant using Nevo AI will start using QuickSet and monitor the network. The network will have IP connected devices, also in-room devices or in-unit devices that would identify themselves by pinging it. QuickSet will match the two and look at the most compatible way or easiest way to actually control these devices. Take that information to our customer cloud, allow them to have access to the different types of products in the room, regardless of who's making it. This type of a service is introduced through UEI's Works with QuickSet, expanding it to different types of devices in the home. Of course, nothing could happen without having a realistic visual on a laptop or a desktop. The UI itself, UEI would provide to our property manager customer a B2B solution. You can customize it the way you want it. The API itself is available for our customers. What it adds is issues of damage in case of emergencies. So if you have a flood sensor that's connected to the thermostat, for example, and it clicks, there's a flood somewhere in the unit. Room 302 has leakage. What happens? The resident is not there, gets the message. The property manager gets the message. Property manager accesses or contacts the resident. Are you home? No. Are you okay with me going into your unit? Yes. They shut down the water, avoiding significant damage. Now, water damage is an very undermined, let's say, issue. People worried about security, theft, and everything, and then in some cases worried about fire. However, water damage is one of the biggest contributors to significant damage in buildings and households that people overlook in a lot of cases. So why QuickSet? I mean, QuickSet is great. Launch of Matter is here already. So Matter has been introduced 2 weeks ago. Products are being compatible, certified, and we won't need QuickSet anymore. Well, not quite. QuickSet will be a complementary feature to Matter in connecting the room. How is that? When entering a room or unit that has a Matter compliant product and a non-Matter compliant product, QuickSet will scan it, bring in the Matter compliant product into the UI, bring in the non-Matter compliant products into the UI, and make it very simply integrated into one user experience. a lot of products out there that are installed in the millions in households and apartment units and different locations won't be matter compliant for hardware limitations and other limitations, as well as the fact that doorbells and IP cameras won't be available for compatibility in the version 1.0 in Matter. So it is crucial to bring these two worlds into one to avoid having two types of systems in one household, adding to the confusion and adding complexity to the consumer's life and the property manager's life. In summary, what does UEI have to offer? Well, we have that smart thermostat called Tide Dial. It's also a hub. It's powered by QuickSet. It gives you access to lighting, air conditioning, drapes, and other devices that are in the household that are not designed and manufactured by UEI, but also gives you sensing capabilities of Zigbee sensors that would enable the comfort level in the unit as well as the security level in the unit through the thermostat itself. All in all, it's a flexible solution. We would provide it based on the customer need, and in this case, our customer is the property manager again, and customize it to your needs. With that, thank you for the time, and I'm open for any questions.
Great. Thank you so much for that awesome presentation. Really love how it's highlighting the different solutions that you all are putting into the market. You've got some great visuals helping us understand how things work. One question we've got from our side is really with all of the great experience that you have and that UEI has, can you talk a little bit about the pace of innovation and where we are now versus maybe 10 or 15 years ago? And then, you know, is there one particular factor? We're talking about energy, we're talking about access controls, we've got labor issues. I mean, there's all sorts of things happening in the market. You know, is there one thing that is going to speed things up? Or, you know, so how would you characterize, you know, just the pace right now versus the past?
Well, technology-wise, things are advancing. People are more aware of connected devices. If you looked 15 years ago, not a lot of people had connected devices in their homes. We're talking about homeowners that have interest in adding, 84% of homeowners want to add a smart device and connected household in their lives. What's driving this is the actual generational change in one case, and the other case is the innovations that are enabling the ROI to become more attainable for people to actually invest in a product like this or in a solution like this. So a few years back, only a small group of people could afford a smart thermostat or a smart device that is in the household. Today, the percentages are growing. While the technology has been there and it's improving, the actual overall economies of scale is making it more attainable. A lot of the property managers and owners, whether it's single home or MDU, are looking at the ROI. So if you can't prove to them that it's about 2-year ROI on a CapEx, they might not end up doing it. Technology-wise, UEI is investing in a number of different solutions, being open and flexible to what's out there, not committing to one specific protocol or technology is important because there are different needs for the different segments of the market. So UEI is always investing in the R&D element of keeping ahead of the curve. Might be ahead of its time a little bit, but when we're introducing it, it's ready to mass production and launching into a market.
Yeah, absolutely. And there always is something next that's coming as we think about technology. I want to take one question here from the audience real quickly. We are at time, but I'm going to throw this question out to you. So is there a solution that has been considered or available that enables smart home through over-the-air linear television network?
Yes. Linear network, maybe not that easy, but smart television, yes. So the previous panel talked about the fiber connectivity and the Wi-Fi connectivity of homes and the importance of that. So, and more consumers actually investing in smart TVs. It is available through that service. In linear television, off-air type of signal, maybe not. However, there are other technologies that we're looking at that would provide for the, I guess I'll just summarize it, what's called MB-IoT, where there is a cellular-like connectivity as opposed to a Wi-Fi-like connectivity that connects the home directly to a cellular signal. It's not over the air in the normal TV sense, but it's over the air in a cellular path where you don't need a router or a hub in the household.
Interesting. Okay, great. Well, that is all the time we've got. I want to sincerely thank you for joining us. It's quite an honor to have you on our virtual stage. I hope to see you in person soon. And thank you again for your contribution today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if you'll stick with us for just a minute, we will be right back with our next session. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us through our new session of Smart Spaces, Apartments, Hospitality, and Community Living. We have a new panel coming up here, System Integration and Platforms Enabling New Services. I think it's been a great virtual session so far. Heard a lot of good information. The keynote just from UEI just now included a lot of good detail on how they're making smart experiences happen. And I'm excited to have a panel that's going to give us more detail from a bunch of varied perspectives. So I wanted to start, before we bring my panelists in, with sort of reminding everyone what we heard from Elizabeth earlier, that there are a number of challenges to bringing smart home and smart security and smart energy experiences into multifamily or small commercial or any of these different smart spaces that we're discussing today. Integrating with the existing devices for sure, working with the property manager solutions. Security and privacy is even more complicated by having multiple users. Technical support can fall on multiple different potential ears. The residents have an opportunity to reach out to you, the manufacturer of the device, or the provider. So there's a lot of different routes there and they all need to be managed and all the loops closed to create a great experience. And then finally, all the Wi-Fi challenges that exist. The devices are obviously reliant on having strong connections, and that can be impacted by what the residents are doing and how they have things deployed in their homes. So it's a very interesting and challenging topic. So I'm excited to have some experts here to come shed some light on how they're making it work. So here's my full list of speakers. I'm excited to first bring in Erin Bullard. She is the Director of Partner Relations at IMEX. Thank you so much, Erin, for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about your company?
Hi, Chris. Yeah, thanks for having me on today. I am somewhat new to the IMEX team, but definitely more than familiar with the value that we offer as a company, having previously been a customer. So for those of you who don't know who and what IMEX is, we're the global leader in video monitoring software, and we're used by hundreds of monitoring centers, SOCs, central stations across the globe. So our platform really aggregates disparate systems and technologies and creates that single pane of glass for operators to really actively manage security events. So as the Director of Partner Relations, my role is really focused on working with our various partners who have products that are integrated to our platform. We have more than 500 different technologies, which includes, video, access control, intercom systems, situational awareness tools and applications, so on and so forth. And it's really vital that we stay in tune with any new features that are coming out, updates to the product, or even new products, so that we can make sure that our customers who could be impacted are aware. So that's IMEX in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you for the introduction, and thanks again for being here. All right, next we have Derek. So we're kind of moving from security to energy. Derek, can you tell us a little bit about Lumen?
Hey, good morning. So Lumen Cache is a DC power and control platform. It sits underneath a lot of the other technologies as a wired platform using typically Cat5 wires out to all the different devices. And what makes it unique is that it's not just about lighting. We started out with lighting. However, the ability to adapt to any particular type of power and control standard that's out there. So by snapping in those little modules into the system, it's kind of like working with Legos. It makes it very fast to use. But the most important thing is that we've bridged the adoption gap. As we know today, only about 5% of homes have any kind of smart home products in them. And that adoption rate has been the same for the last 30 years. So Lumen Cache is aiming to flip that to 95% by creating a system that's as simple and reliable as the light switch for builders to install. So there's nothing really new to learn for the user. But then underneath it, you have this amazing automation platform that integrates quite nicely. So we can talk a lot about the integration benefits with the rest of the panelists.
All right, great. Yeah, we're going to talk about integration for sure. So the next person I'd like to bring on is Patrick Gomer from Vantiva. Patrick, It's a pleasure having you on here. We've had you on the Connected Consumer podcast, which was a great conversation. I'm looking forward to your contributions here as well. For the audience who doesn't necessarily know him, he's the Chief Architect of Cloud Services and Connected Home at newly branded Vantiva. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you guys do?
Yeah, thanks, Chris, for the introduction. So the name might be new. I mean, we recently have been rebranded to Vantiva and split it off our creative services, our media created services. But in essence, we are a 100-year-old company with a heritage in consumer electronics, telecom, brands like RCA, General Electrics, and currently Connected Home, I think, is our core business. We're focusing and we have been delivering for the last 20 years products to the network service provider industry, the telcos, the operators. And there we have actually a number one position in broadband equipment, broadband gateways with all kinds of access technologies, from wired to wireless. And we're also number one in the video set-top box world, mainly with Android TV set-top boxes. And as a second element, or as a third element, and certainly with all the aspects in the supply chain, we are a leader and we have a very sound and solid supply chain infrastructure to deliver these devices to our customers. My role in the company as a cloud architect, as a solution architect, is looking at the technology evolutions. And my last 2 years, I focused a lot on our diversification program into IoT, focusing on smart spaces in general and trying to diversify, see how we can use our products, our portfolio of products also towards other service providers, towards other industries, being that MDUs, hospitality, retail, and even light commercial kind of spaces.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for that introduction. Good to see you again. Thanks for being here. All right, next I have another familiar face that's next to a new logo. We also have Say Pike, the head of multifamily at ADT. Hello, Say, how are you?
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everybody, for joining. So it's great to be here. Yes, I was the CEO and founder of IOTAS, which was recently acquired by ADT. And now I'm the head of multifamily at ADT. I'm really excited to be part of ADT because everybody knows ADT as the most trusted, reliable brand. Everybody sees that blue octagon and they immediately think security and this building is secure. However, in addition to that, ADT has also been in the smart spaces world as well for several years. And we've been kind of eyeing each other as competitors for a while, but really the main thing that is really impressive about what ADT has done is it has created this amazing network of installers who can actually service these buildings, 6,000 techs on the ground, and they have such a great operational excellence. And so putting together IOTAS's product and innovation around smart spaces, so smart properties, building management, making sure that your buildings don't have leaks, making sure that your units can be accessed for self-guided tours, etc. That's one of the things that IOTAS brings to the picture, that ADT can actually help support, expand, scale, and really be the boots on the ground when anything goes wrong. And that's one of the things that I was really excited about. And I'm really happy to be here to be able to kind of speak to the offering that ADT has, which is, of course, the smart property aspect and the security aspect. But when you bring that together for single family home rentals, for garden style properties, there's so much offerings and opportunity that we can provide to the smart spaces community, that from our angle, where we really stand is how can we help you operate your buildings better, lower your cost of labor, lower your cost around any sort of risks and mitigate risks. And with new services coming on board, from solar to insurance packages, there's some really interesting things that we're going to be rolling out in the next few years.
Yeah, Say, I mean, you guys did a lot of impressive stuff as IOTAS, and I'm excited to see how you do with all the additional clout and resources that ADT has to support you with. So it's great. Thank you for being here. All right, last but not least, we have Miriam Alicia Rogers, the Director of Multifamily Sales at Brivo. Thank you, Miriam, for being here. Good to see you. Could you tell us a little bit about Brivo?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a great pleasure to be a part of these conversations and really provide a knowledge base with industry experts. This is a great panel discussion that everybody's in for a treat. And I want to talk a little bit about Brivo and then also the importance of partnerships, which Say and ADT is one of our partners. So I'm happy to be on this call with them as well. But Brivo really is a holistic multifamily solution for all things access control, video surveillance, parking solutions, IoT and smart devices. Whether it's something that we do ourselves or through API partners, we really are able to provide a holistic experience and unified resident app and being able to take technology to the next level. We've been in business for 25 years, and we have secured over 300 million square feet of real estate in over 70,000 deployments. And we also work with certified resellers. So we have over 1,500 dealers that are designing access control, implementing it. They are also the service providers in any given market. So we rely heavily on the channel partners for our success. And we currently have 67 API partners. So just to speak a little bit about what it takes to create a special and unique experience for residents, it really does take a village. And in this case, a lot of partnerships. So we are able to provide a solution for the on-site staff to make it seamless. And oftentimes we're the backbone of the access control platform that the end user doesn't necessarily know that they're even interfacing with. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Chris, and we can get this thing rocking and rolling.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to stay with you for the rock and rolling part, Miriam. So let's see if you can kind of act as our opener here. So we want to talk about new construction and kind of the brownfield move into existing construction separately. So I'm going to go ahead and start with new and start with you, Ms. Miriam. What would you like to say that Brivo can do to help builders that are developing choosing the technology and trying to design the experience for their future residents? How does Brivo help them?
Well, they don't know what they don't know. And often we look at a developer and an ownership group, and then there's an entire other side of that, which is the operations team. They're the one using technology that go into buildings. So the earlier we can come in, the better, because we start looking at a set of site plans and we walk them through, like, did you think of this scenario? Did you think of guest access and self-guided tours? Have you considered what technology impacts your ability to do early lease up and having multiple vendors on site? And then what is that experience from the beginning? Because when you start looking at access control and surveillance, smart apartments, it's always an afterthought, which results in change orders. And in our case, we have a lot of our dealers that are low voltage certified. And so that bleeds into the scope of work of what perhaps the GC subs will be doing versus what we can do. So the earlier that we're involved, we can start from literally ground up or even before they even start turning dirt and provide a set of plans that allow us to grow and change with the needs of the design. But making sure that we're thinking through all of those problems that are often an afterthought.
Right. I mean, all that thought leadership and partnership is very valuable. Now, Derek, you're another sort of player here that specializes in new construction. You want to talk about kind of why it's best? I mean, I'd say the nature of your technology means that it's best for new construction, but talk about how you're kind of bringing the new approach to helping the new construction builders.
Well, sure. And to continue on with what Miriam was just saying, the controls people are oftentimes they should be the first ones that a builder contacts because they're going to be the ones that have that lasting relationship with the owner operators. And LumenCache is, yes, brand new. I'm going to call it that. However, we've been doing this for 10 years. So, the timing is everything when you're doing a startup. And we were perfectly on time, just 8 or 10 years too early. The market is now caught up. And what's so nice to see is that in new construction, just the cost of copper alone has completely changed the game. So at $9,000 a ton and at a 60% savings in copper, most properties, have a significant savings there. There's energy savings, of course, because we only convert one time from the AC grid to DC. And then we distribute DC throughout the building. You can kind of see an example of this over my shoulder. But what this produces is a whole new wired infrastructure. And as you know, in commercial systems, they're almost always wired. Wireless is, of course, a fantastic convenience. I'm not against wireless in any way. In fact, because the Generation 2 product is, fully Ethernet compliant, that means that we can make endpoints at any one of the locations for switches or lights, et cetera, and other devices. So it really does create a stronger platform upon which all of these great kind of smart applications and services can be built upon.
Right. So that is helping these new builders are kind of be set up for success, that they're getting some kind of new cutting edge thinking in terms of using DC for energy efficiency and lower harmonics and all sorts of things about energy conditioning that probably is only for the energy groups that that I'm using being in sometimes. But also Brivo is bringing advice on all sorts of other solutions. Now, would you tell us a little bit about coming into a property that doesn't have all of the kind of head start that they might get from some of our other panelists here, and trying to bring them up to date and bring all the solutions in, both from your IOTAS perspective and the new kind of ADT components that you can bring in?
Sure. We do a lot of brownfield or retrofits, right, of existing buildings. I mean, the thing with the multifamily industry is that most of the buildings are actually in garden style in existing buildings, right? So we do quite a bit of those. And one of the things that we find always that we always do a site check, and we really need to figure out what the connectivity type is there. Do they have Wi-Fi throughout the property? Do they not? Do they have even Ethernet ports throughout the property? And we also really need to understand from a software perspective, what are the software systems that they're already using for billing and account management as well, because we integrate with pretty much all the PMS solutions out there, Yardi, Intrada, Resman, RealPage, and about to add AppFolio as well. And we really need that kind of information for letting people move in, move out, and then giving them access, cutting off access for the resident side, right? And so from getting a building ready perspective, we do quite a bit of discovery with our owners to understand that, is this a building that's a great fit for what type of product? Is it a great fit for access? So we, as Miriam said, we partner with Brivo if they need access into the building, or is it just a garden style that has direct access into it? In that case, they may actually need more security aspect as well. And so we try to understand what is the makeup of the community, what is the makeup of the portfolio as well, and try to right size the product line with it. So that's one of the key things that we really need to understand, is that most of the time, like I would say 99.9% of the time, we can easily retrofit a building to become smart. But you have to go in with your eyes open and really understand what's there, what's not there. Do they already have an intercom system? Do they have elevator control? Do they already have Brivo in there or something else? And really try to go in with our eyes open. And one of the things I think that's fascinating is that when you ask most owners or managers, is your building smart? They'll say no, but they already have maybe smart locks, right? It's just, to them, it's so ingrained as part of their system that they don't think of it as smart. And I think the definition of smart now is yes, it is a comprehensive software and hardware integration.
Yeah, we kind of experience that too when we're doing our research, that consumers who have been in the game for a while have kind of moved past the idea of Wi-Fi connectivity as the definition of smart and are now thinking about integration and automation as the next step. It's a pain for us because we just want both people to say, yes, it's smart, but that's okay. We fight through it. Aaron, can I go to you next? Same question about brownfield. What is your approach in terms of coming in and dealing with the existing software and hardware base?
Absolutely. You probably saw me nodding and smiling as Say was talking. She was touching on a lot of the same experiences that I've had. And a lot of the discovery is really important in becoming their trusted advisor. I think a lot of the issues that I saw in some of my roles have been making sure that you have the right stakeholders involved at the right point in time. Miriam, I think you touched on it as well. And what is the infrastructure that's existing? The lens that we approach things from is setting up systems to deliver services, whether that's monitoring services or managed services. You know, it's really how do you leverage what is existing, what needs to be updated to really make things work for actively advancing those services and making sure that they're scalable, making sure that you can adapt to future needs as well. So it can be a challenge, but the discovery piece is something that you just can't sacrifice the due diligence on.
Right. Now, Patrick, Vantiva is working really kind of more at the heart. You're actually going in there and changing a lot of the infrastructure that sits underneath all the services that everyone else is kind of talking about. Can you tell us a little bit about working in brownfield?
Yeah, Chris, I mean, I think over the last 2 years with our diversification programs and working together with our partners, that has brought us to many of these different places. And like indeed already mentioned, the discovery of these kind of places, buildings, always bring a lot of surprises. I think it's clear from our side, the infrastructure that we bring, that, let's say, connectivity is the first biggest problem to solve. And if you look at the different use cases that our customers have, they typically have a whole slew of different use cases. We know most of them, but it's always crossing the chasm, I would say. I mean, it's getting the first use cases deployed in a cost-effective way before you can start dreaming about implementing the rest. And in a lot of, I think, use cases that we have seen, you always have these kind of big surprises. On one hand, indeed, how can we provide connectivity? And it's clear there is no solution fits all. I think if you are in a complete new building, Ethernet, which is perfect technology, might be ideal. In brownfield, sometimes that can be cost prohibitive. So wireless technologies, being that now Wi-Fi or even the low power wireless technologies, can sometimes make a business case valid or not. So we're trying to typically see on finding the best mix to come to a cost-effective solution. But every building, if it's now depending on the company, is almost a snowflake. It's like in the smart home. I had a visit a week ago, and it took us half a day to figure out where the cabling was. We had to cross from one building to the other, and nobody could tell us how the wires were configured. I think that's a typical kind of thing that people always see in these kind of buildings. And that's, I think, where that kind of connectivity come in. If you can solve that in a cost-effective way, the rest of the services that run down on that kind of infrastructure will succeed and at least can be implemented. As a last note, I think besides connectivity, the next big problem is, of course, the integration into the existing infrastructure, which I think can also blow up the business case, because that can also be extremely complex, time-consuming, and expensive.
Yeah, so speaking of the underlying infrastructure, there's a question from the audience I think is interesting. I want to direct to Derek. For older buildings and retrofits, there is also a need for power. Is there any work that you can do for solving this problem that doesn't involve batteries? So this is, I think it's a question about the increase in needs that an older building might have when you show up and put, the electrification, more technology in there. So Derek, you're working in the energy space. I'm put you in charge of the energy question.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny because there's a lot of integration with the first generation was a proof of concept, right? I mean, I had never expected it to last this long. It's been in buildings for 10 years, as I said. But what's interesting is that at each endpoint, we have just 12-volt accessory power. So the main power to the device, let's say a light or whatever device is being powered by it, is separate from this 12-volt accessory power. So it's perfect for powering sensors that don't need main power. Of course, as we've just discussed, we've got the challenge of it's a different type of wiring. So typically you would be using this type of LumenCache in new buildings. We say make all buildings smart from the start. So that's definitely a call to action for all the developers that are creating a new building. Don't stick with the old AC infrastructure that's kind of passé, if I can call it that by now. However, batteries and connectivity are the two major challenges that any product manager has to deal with when they're producing a new smart technology. And so having and indoor air quality sensors are a good example of that, right? They typically tend to be little energy hogs. And so the batteries don't last very long. But having that little 12-volt, a couple of watt power at any device means that you can immediately power those types of devices. Obviously, power over Ethernet is a well-known standard. And so we have a PoE card that just snaps in. And that gives you anything up to right now 802.3 BT. And single pair Ethernet is the next big thing, which, by the way, goes a much longer distance too. So all these new technologies can allow you to wire up and use your wires a little bit more effectively for getting the power and energy throughout the building.
All right, so Derek, I appreciate your true believer DC power stuff, but not everyone's going to want to change something so fundamental to how their building is working, but they might just still need a boost. So say I was hoping I could go to you, because I know that now that ADT has access to solar, there's a whole new array of partners over there in that space in terms of storage and generation. And I was wondering if you've kind of gotten to start thinking about this, or if you have any kind of cases in mind where you guys have gone in. I always think of Boston, because I at some point did some qual and found a whole bunch of people had 100 amp circuits on their single family homes, and we were trying to figure out how they could do anything in their homes. So some crusty old buildings in Boston that need more power, and you want to put gadgets everywhere. Mm-hmm. What would you guys do?
So one, it's not a limitation for us. I'll say that. But two, yes, going back to kind of the solar conversation, we had some really interesting conversation even before at IOTAS, before ADT bought us and bought the solar company. And I do believe that ADT will become the largest solar company in the nation, where we actually talked to some folks, real estate folks that we were deploying in, where they were building, and this is fascinating with real estate, is that they have land that they may not want to develop right now. So they actually built a huge solar farm, and on top of the solar farm, they were giving it back to the grid, right? And so it worked out a deal with the utility, the local utility, to essentially get power to their buildings and bill free for the next 10 years because they were putting so much back into the grid. And so when we look at all the opportunities that we have, especially with single family rentals becoming such a hot area for built as well as retrofit, we're looking at how can we take some of the learnings that we have had in the past of watching other real estate developers really get into building these kind of solar areas, because that's actually real estate on top of the roofs that they're not even thinking about, that they can push back to the grid and monetize as well, right? So there's some really fascinating conversations going on right now around that, and I'm really excited that we have that arm within ADT to pull in.
Yeah, that's great. We had a Smart Energy Summit this morning, a virtual conference, and focused on distributed energy. So I've been thinking about virtual power plants all day today, and land. People shouldn't sleep on land-based. Sometimes you just have some random field near your building. You might as well use it for something, right? But then also to your point about rooftop in any form factor of a building, something to consider. All right, so speaking of this, we're talking about different building types, form factors. So I wanted to ask you guys why you kind of each of your organizations kind of made the choice to focus on multifamily for the most part, and tell us why that's kind of a more attractive opportunity. Erin, can I come back to you for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, this is really our bread and butter. I think a lot of single family residences are prone to self-monitoring. And as we look at really managing some of those services, the opportunity to provide more valuable touch points and value with managed services is a lot closer with MDU than it is going to be with that single family residence. Our goal is really to open up additional stickiness, additional RMR streams, and the MDU space has a lot more opportunity to create that to their constituents, to their tenants, really allow them to not just cover cost, but create value, have margins, and really provide a better experience for their tenants, becoming a differentiated provider.
Right. So Aaron brings up an important point. Miriam, is multifamily, is it the best because scale, or is it the best because the opportunities for RMR are there, and that's what everyone's looking for in the emerging tech space, it seems?
I mean, both. I think that when you start looking at multifamily, it's a 10x multiplier for RMR. So not only that, but like Aaron said, when you start looking at service delivery, single family, you would be driving to hundreds of homes to get the same amount of quantity that you would in any given multifamily community. So when you start layering on the different services that we all offer, it's easier for service providers. It's easier for the on-site team, because then they start seeing, the same familiar face coming in, and you are dealing with residents and their home. And so when you start looking at the, qualification and elevated customer service that is required, it makes a lot of sense if you can be that same person to do all of the services in that building, as opposed to having, somebody that does in a single family home, 10 different services, you have to call 10 different people. So it is a better resident experience. You can call the same people for customer support for your residents that you can for the on-site team. Mostly it's a huge RMR driver. And I don't know anybody that's still doing it the old fashioned way, if you will, where they're not capitalizing on RMR, because that's what keeps us all in business. And that's where the industry is really moving. Brivo started out as the first cloud-based access control company. And it was almost like, I think it was Patrick who said we were too early, or Derek, one of them said we were 10 years too early, Derek. And Brivo was that forefront 25 years ago, where we said, hey, let's take access control to the cloud. And it was almost laughable because everything was on-prem. And so now you fast forward 25 years later, our entire business model is RMR.
No, that's great. So Patrick, what do you say? Even though you have the bad experience sometimes of wandering from building to building, trying to figure out where the bodies are buried with regards to the infrastructure, why is multifamily still the best choice for Vantiva?
Yeah, I think I'm going to give the same answer as you know. I mean, we have been in smart home for the last 20 years. It's clear that if you look at the business case and the use cases for the property manager, I think that's where the real benefit is for us.
Okay, great. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about partnerships. So I think I want to go back to you, Miriam, because that's something you really highlighted in your kind of intro, the number of APIs you guys are using that seems like is very important. What do you think are kind of a little bit like best practices in choosing partners, in working with partners, and if there's anyone you want to highlight in terms of partners other than over there. So you can say that she's a good partner, but also other organizations that our audience might be interested in thinking about working with as well.
Yeah, so not everybody can be experts at everything, right? So you have to really choose your partnerships strategically to say who's best in class, who can bring, the elevated customer experience that we're looking for that helps represent our brand, and being able to say they're already doing it perfectly. Why are we trying to reinvent the wheel? So being strategic about those partnerships, providing best in class, and being able to say this is a product solution where everybody wins. Because if not, you're all going to hit the ground running. And if you can't partner together, a lot are going to fall to the wayside. But really saying, this is who we choose and here's why, because they have the same exact expectation we do, the same morals, the same, urgency when it comes to ticketing or service solutions. And being able to look and say, now we have a flexible solution that you get to decide what option you want. So Brivo is an integrated partner with some of our competitors in terms of, access control platforms that some of our IoT partners started doing their own things. But it's one of the best testaments that I say, and when I talk to people, is that if you want somebody else in unit, perfect. Bring them in IoT because they're going to do it, and that gives you what you want. We're access control partners with a lot of those competitors. So making sure that you can create that environment that's like, hey, let's all play nicely, because there's so many options for customers to choose from. It's exhausting. They don't want to deal with, 47 people that they have to call. So if I can say, hey, I have 67 partners, I know who they are, let me bring in the best of class to give you exactly what you want, then I win, the customer wins, everybody's happy, because we have the ability to create flexible solutions. It's not a one size fits all. What Say was saying, like a garden style's needs are completely different than a mid or high rise. And being able to say, yes, this partner can do this for you with us, it makes it easier for everybody. And, ADT is a partner, but we also, I don't want to not call out everybody. The list is 80 or 67 long, but I will say we win together because of our relationships with our API partners.
Okay, cool. So I wanted to keep it positive, but the audience wants to ask me, what about limitations and roadblocks you've come across when working with API partners?
Sometimes, there's a lot that you overcome, but really being open-minded and coming to the drawing board to solve the problem strategically together is how you have to have that, and not thinking you're the smartest person in the room. So sometimes egos can get in the way, and you have to dial it back and say, okay, let's all try to come to a conclusion together. I say that sometimes that's the biggest challenge, but it's nothing you can't overcome. There's hurdles in every single thing that you do. It's just how you work with the partners to overcome that.
Yeah, that's great that you put such a focus on the people there instead of just focusing on the technology, because the technology is something you can change and work around if the two organizations have the kind of a culture fit like you're describing. All right, Say, I'm going to give you a chance now to say that Brivo is good before any talk to everybody.
Brivo is awesome, and they have actually one of the more. And I'm going to answer that kind of question as well, but maybe from a tech perspective, one of the more reliable API is for us to integrate. So I think answering that question that came from the audience, some of the challenges we've had is that we've had partners who were younger, I guess, Brivo's been around a long time, as well as many of the panelists here. But if they're a little bit of more on the younger side of a startup world, they have constant changes to their APIs, right? So we just had a partner who completely made us redo their API, or we're in the process of redoing the API because they're rolling out a whole new stack on the technology side. And we've had this happen multiple times with different partners. And so I would say that the most interesting things we're very hardware agnostic as well. So same kind of mindset with Brivo. We believe that you're a specialist. You do what you do really, really well. What we do well at ADT and IOTAS was create that cloud, the fleet management of different hardware solutions and different software solutions, and integrate that all into kind of one throat to choke, or as you would say, one back to pat, right, kind of thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so we do that very well, and we try to stay as agnostic as possible to give choice to our customers, as Miriam was saying. But in that, we have to be very, very careful, and I want our customers to really start thinking through, how long will some of these startups and how long will some of these companies last? How stable is their environment, meaning their tech environment, their tech ecosystem as well. And we have been challenging some of our customers to say, I know you want us to integrate this latest, greatest, shiny object, but can we give it a minute? Can we give them a minute? And let's think about this, because how does that impact your entire ecosystem? So.
All right. So Patrick, so far we have on the table relationships, working together on troubleshooting, and kind of a stability in tech, and a reasonable, I guess, frequency of changes and upgrades. How about you, with your experience, Vantiva now and Technicolor back in the day, working with partners? What are the kind of good ones you've seen, and wherever there also been roadblocks?
So already from our core business, we have been working with partners. It has been in our DNA to actually enable our partners to create services and to differentiate themselves. So when we started the IoT diversification program, we actually came up with a kind of strategy that we called the 4 C's for connect, collect, compute, and create. The first 2 C's is what we would do best. I mean, that's our core business. That is connecting devices, collecting data, and then we created our ecosystem of partners that were specialized either in compute, cloud solutions, ISVs, can be IoT platforms, can be analytics, and then we also surrounded us with partners that could create real solutions for us. And in that kind of endeavor, a number of key elements were really important for us. If you look at our devices, first of all, openness. I mean, we try to make our devices as open as possible. We deliver SDKs, we make it as frictionless as possible. We provide lifecycle management around software for the firmware, even for the applications. And we are a strong believer in open source, contributing to open source. And even nowadays, what we would call open standards, standards like Docker, like OpenThread, is also something where we absolutely contribute to. Next to that, we see that time to market is key. I mean, most of these projects here fail because either they take simply too long, either the business case has not been vetted. So we have a kind of opinion to fail fast. In order to help our, let's say, our partners and our customers, we have done a lot of pre-integration with a lot of partner solutions so that if somebody wants to build something with our products, they have a head start. Typically, we deliver our solutions, not only our gateways, our wireless extenders, but we also are kitting that with sensors. We provide them a starter kit so that that road to market can be limited to a couple of months before you actually have a minimal viable product. And then last but not least, we absolutely don't want to have an opinion. Certainly, if it, and I had that already around connectivity, we, in our products, we literally support all kinds of protocols, being it wired, being it wireless. And it's up to the customer and to the use case, I think, to actually make sure that we select the right kind of connectivity technology for the use case in question.
All right, Patrick, thanks for that explanation. Also, I know that when you're wearing Vantiva hat, you don't have preferences or opinions, but I know you, and you have secret, quiet takes, probably behind the scenes. But all right, so Derek, I want to kind of ask you the same question, but also kind of take it one step further. So in terms of who you're choosing to partner with, what are kind of new coming revenue opportunities and new partnership opportunities kind of in new categories and stuff? Considering the type of work that you guys do, I'm assuming there's a bunch of energy opportunities that you're seeing. And one of the audience is asking about the EV play as well. So could you talk about partnerships and kind of what's coming next for you guys in terms of who you'd like to partner with, and then for sure answer EV.
Sure, and if we can continue the API discussion, the nice thing about standards is that if you don't like an existing one, you can create a new one. It's an inside joke about it, but the reality is that there's a lot of fairly robust API interfaces and standards that we already do have, which is nice. The ability to choose amongst them is how a lot of the integrators are starting to work faster together. That really does help. There's always going to be that integration that we have to build. But, speaking to your question about the energy space, New York City, for example, has a new law, Local Law 97, that requires submetering. And one of my favorite conversations a long time ago is 2015, when Forest City Enterprises did their first building with us. They were the executives came in the room and they're like, Derek, this is great. It's like we're going to provide battery backup for everybody in our units and just give them free lighting, because the lighting costs like $5 to $7 per month. It disappears in the balance sheet. And so they said, every time there's a power outage, everyone's going to look up at our buildings. They're going to see everyone there. They're going to want to move in there. But, there's submetering laws, for example, and each one of the power distribution modules has its own submetering. So, for example, just a matter of collecting that data and then using it. So additional services like the other members on the panel today, can gather that information and turn that into actionable items, whether it's a RMR opportunity, et cetera. I was kind of chuckling as I was hearing the thing about RMR is everything. In our model, it's almost the flip side of that. We enable the RMR opportunities by creating the platform, but we actually don't require it. We don't require any kind of service contracts, et cetera. So, we're very much focused on the hardware side of things in creating this open platform. And the open platform is probably the most important thing, because you want hardware to be able to evolve as quickly as the software. There's certainly, as Patrick mentions, a lot of stability steps. So I also mentioned how the stability of the standard is important for creating those interfaces, which, by the way, to answer your question, Chris, is why we hadn't reached out in the past, because we knew it wasn't mature enough. And I've been doing standards since BACnet. I was one of the kids who was involved in helping with feedback on that. And BACnet has lasted for 30 plus years because it's such a solid standard. So I'm hoping that the next 30 years will not only involve software standards like BACnet and protocol, but it'll also involve some hardware standards. And that's part of what we're trying to produce and bring to the market.
Okay, but I'm going to put the EV question up to the group. Also,
Yeah.
you're the most obvious. DC, you should be doing the fastest charging, blah, blah. Tell them you guys are going to do EVs.
Yeah, I mean, we can deep dive into DC all you want. My initials are DC. My sister's initials are AC. My father's initials are FCC. I was somewhat engineered for this. But, electric vehicles now, you've got a lot of vehicle to grid opportunities. So there's so much in the grid interactive building space. And of course, that creates what's called virtual power plants. Lumen Cache, the whole name implies, light storage. And so you can have these kinds of instant interactivity. So utility companies, for example, can be one of those taps of information. And the utilities, interestingly, have learned, hey, we don't actually have to provide so many incentives about this now, because we can just make a phone call, a couple of tweets, and then everybody will cut back and save the grid. But the reality is that that's going to get old pretty quick. And so interactivity being built into the homes and buildings is probably going to be the best savings opportunity. And again, it makes a better use case for all the different types of applications that will come together to aggregate and to integrate these types of capabilities at the hardware level.
Okay, so I'm not seeing anyone say that they're excited about the EV play. And I was confident. Instead, we got demand response and VPPs from Derek. Everyone else just look at me. Okay, so instead, I want to go back to a different audience question. And I think Erin, I'm sorry, I've been neglecting you a little bit, so I'm bring you in. Hi, Erin.
Hey, Chris.
So do you see a trend emerging? One of our audience members does, where non-security-based companies are entering the multifamily space to compete against traditional security?
Absolutely. I mean, we see a lot of telecom providers even entering this space. And, from our standpoint, I think Miriam mentioned it, it's important for us to, go back to marketing 101. You can't be all things to all people. What are the things that we do really well? What are the things that they do really well? And let's build a partnership off of that. And we're fine to do that, provided they are a company that's transparent and we're working towards the same goals. I mean, ultimately, we are here to deliver services to our customers and allow them something that's reliable, something that works, something that adds value. Things happen really fast. Technology evolves really fast, and it's important for us to make sure that we are developing an agile product that is able to adapt to those new innovations, to new companies that are coming into the market, maybe don't understand security as well, and just the evolving market needs. I think there's an opportunity to work together, again, provided they understand what we're working towards.
Okay, so Erin thinks that she can play nice with them. Say, you're gonna crush them, right? If Comcast Home Services tries to come into your territory?
Yes. No, I mean, we also do partner with telcos quite a bit as well. It's because the connectivity portion is actually something that is very necessary. I think, though, they're rapidly realizing that, as Miriam and Erin has said, bigger companies realize, in some ways, specializing and finding the right partner is the best way to go, because it is too hard to be all things to everybody, right? I think this is some of the things, like I watched some of our competitors who are trying to do like Access Entry, what Miriam's doing, what, you know, Aaron's doing, and it's and trying to be and do what we do as well. And then on top of that, some things that ADT on the security side is doing. So it's kind of this really interesting mishmash when you watch how a company wants to essentially scale. They start specializing in one thing and they do it really well and find the right partners. And we're watching kind of that transition happen as well, where telcos kind of dipped into certain things and are somewhat pulling out and looking at the right partners to talk to.
All right, great. I'm a little bit disappointed that you backed off that we're going to crush them thing, but whatever. Okay, fine. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Also, so we have another audience question in terms of looking at RMR. What do you see as the next solution? Aaron, I know we talked about managed Wi-Fi is the next big thing. Do you want to talk about why you think that's true in terms of RMR that's coming down the pike here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our platform is really predicated on providing the right information to the right person at the right time to take some sort of appropriate action, and helping to manage that. And the two things that we cannot get around are power and connectivity. Connectivity being one that is maybe a little bit less reliable at times. It can have more inconsistencies. And being able to manage that, being able to alert when there's an issue, understanding the bandwidth, and really being able to have information that is provided to us from more devices really allows us to help manage Wi-Fi, to help manage connectivity, to make sure that, again, all of the other services and RMR streams that are coming in, that those are not going to be impacted by something that's so fundamental.
Oh, Derek, you have an idea? Go ahead.
I'm chuckling because I apologize. I mean, I have a gigabit internet speed here. It's absolutely incredible. And my internet just went out. And so to come back into the call and talk about connectivity and the importance of it. Yes, absolutely. And, you know, we've already had discussions, I'm sure, in the last couple of years about edge and how the importance of, you know, having everything, you know, constructed and architected in a way that it's reliable, regardless of whether or not you have a temporary interruption in connectivity. And that same model is now happening to power, by the way. So that's a whole other topic I'm sure we could expound on. But I mean, yeah, all of these services and grids and connectivity, et cetera, is fantastic when it works. This was not intentional. This was actual, like, you know, my internet just went out. But perfect example, right live.
All right, that's right. Battery backup for resilience, right? UPS for Derek for his should be mesh system. Okay, so I think we're basically at time. I wanted to give anyone a last second if they wanted to volunteer a what's coming next idea or an RMR idea.
Chris, I want to just say one thing. And the work that you guys are doing, the market research, polling residents, being able to provide real analytics. The reason why we see this is coming, the new frontier of connectivity. Parks Associate published a research paper in June of this year. That was the #1 asked for amenity amongst the residents that you guys polled. So first, thank you for your market research and being able to, that's where, at least for us, you know, we're really looking at that to say what's on our roadmap. How are we going to develop and partner with them strategically, because we listen to what the residents are asking for. And with the FCC changing the way that you are not able to have a monopoly on Wi-Fi anymore, that has really been a game changer and opened it up to a lot of providers coming to this space. And again, multifamily is bulk. It's easier than, you know, well, it's not easier in terms of connectivity as a single family, but it drives the RMR, and being able to provide a tech package in addition to a security package. It's replacing what cable TV used to be. Being able to have security technology, and what does that mean? Smart buildings, and not just a smart lock or a smart thermostat, but the entire ecosystem that you're touching that technology before you ever even sign a lease.
That's great. So we're at time, but this is a perfect way to go out with Miriam plugging I think it was a white paper, probably. So definitely everyone look up our research. And everyone, thank you. I'm going to let you all go and then kind of promote everything. But I really appreciate you guys taking the time and talking to us on our inaugural Smart Spaces virtual conference. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. So speaking of research, I wanted to make sure everyone was aware that we have a Quantified Consumer, which is our data-heavy research product available called Smart Home Opportunities and Multifamily Properties that I believe Kristen authored, who you saw earlier today. And there's a lot of good insights in there that you can dig in deeper on some of the topics that we've discussed today and see lots and lots and lots more data where the data came from that you also saw earlier today. So definitely reach out to our team on that. Also, speaking of white papers, like Miriam was talking about, we are happy to work with you guys on putting together white papers and webinars. And I'm one of the co-hosts of the podcast, along with my friend Rosie and the Connected Consumer podcast. And we are happy to talk to you the way that Patrick came on during his Technicolor days to talk about their solutions they have. So there's a lot of opportunities to work with Parks Associates, get more information from us, and to also kind of help disseminate the information you have and get your voice heard. So speaking of getting your voice heard and hearing from people, we have a bunch of conferences coming up in 2023, including an in-person one here in Dallas in April. So definitely be in contact with our team if you're interested in coming out and meeting us in person. These in-person conferences are awesome because you get a chance to work in a really intimate setting with all of the players in the audience. Is really unlike giant conferences where maybe you're just struggling to get a meeting or meet someone at a table. We're a little bit smaller and everyone's kind of in the same room and everyone gets to mingle and share ideas. So please consider that. We also have 3 more virtual conferences coming and the opportunities to speak, opportunities to attend, and opportunities to sponsor. So definitely contact us for all of those. All right, here's a full list. Lots more virtual conferences and in-person conferences, basically one of each for each of our major verticals. So whether you're interested in energy, health, or video, we have a conference for you, and we'd love to come and see you. So thanks to you everyone for joining us today. I hope you had a great experience at our kind of first Smart Spaces event. I'm excited that we're highlighting this kind of cutting edge space of multifamily. And I appreciate all you guys for attending.